Hey friends, Wendell Myers here, welcome. I have finished several paintings, several small paintings on paper. If you follow me, you've probably seen these in a couple of videos while I was working on them. You can see they're a little curled, so I'm going to mount them before I photograph them because they'll be nice and flat. As long as I don't varnish them before I try to photograph them, it works fine. I usually photograph them first, but when they're curled like this, it's a little bit of an issue. So I need to get them flat first by mounting them. And I will be mounting them on these 2-inch deep cradled panels. These are very high quality gesso panels from DaVinci. They're 2 inches deep, really nice quality. If you shop for panels, you will find that there's a really wide variety of depth and quality and price. Sometimes it's hard for me to find the size that I'm looking for in the 2-inch depth. There are a lot of 1.5 inch and other depths, and I want 2 inches because I want them to be stable sitting on a shelf or a table. I want hanging to be an option and not a requirement. And I also don't want a lot more depth than this because for a small painting it looks kind of strange on the wall if it's too deep. 2 inches is fine, but a whole lot more than that would look strange, I think. So I'm going to start just by painting the edges, the sides rather, and just an inch or so of the top black, and then we'll go from there. For painting the sides of paintings and panels, I like to use this TriArt black gesso. It's actually from Canada. I've tried the black gesso from Golden and it's just too flat. I don't like how flat it is. This has just a tiny bit of sheen to it, which I prefer. It's a nicer, in my opinion, it's a nicer surface for painting on if you're using black gesso. And it's a richer black than some black paints that I've tried. So that's TriArt from Canada. One thing that I find really helpful doing this is these Talente Gelato containers. These are great containers to use around the studio. I use them as stands to stand things on, put leftover paint in them, etc. And using these jars in the studio gives you a really good excuse for buying and eating this stuff, which is great stuff. Highly recommended. So I'm just going to use a foam brush for this. You don't need a fancy brush, but I don't want a lot of brush strokes because I want this to be nice and smooth. And what I'm going to do is put one coat on here that's going to raise the grain of the wood a little bit, and then I'm going to sand it. And then put a second coat. Occasionally I need 3 coats. Kind of depends just on how it goes, you know. See, just the edge there. And just to show you what those empty gelato jars are all about, you can see that I've used them as stands here, holding the panels off the table. You can see that the table has a lot of paint on it, and that will actually stick to the edges of the panels if I get that wet black gesso between the panel and the paint. This paint won't stick to this table because it's covered with plastic that the paint won't stick to, but it will stick to the gesso, so that's what those jars are for.